Everyone, just give it a minute for people to join. See a few people joining the lobby. Gosh, Elise, I'm glad you're doing this. I'd be panicking.
My Teams is being so slow as well, so I'm hoping it's letting everyone in nicely. But yeah.
Cool. All right.
And there we go.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll kick us off. So Shemai, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join our show and tell. Just to give you a bit of a rundown of sort of what's in store, we'll be giving you an update of what we've learned from our Checking Our Thinking sessions, where we've tested the assumptions made in the form with 5 volunteer councils. And again, just want to say thank you so much for those who took part and took up their valuable time. You know, it's really helped us to support the progress of this project. So yeah, huge thanks from us. Yeah, and then after that update, I will quickly wrap us up with sort of where we're going next, what's happening next in the project, and we'll end it with any questions, if there are any. So yeah, with all that being said, I'll pass you on to our lead service designer, Adam, for that first update.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everybody. So, as Lauren mentioned, what we've been doing recently is checking our thinking with councils. So we've created this simplified single application form, and that was based on 28 different assumptions. And it was really important for us to understand whether these were correct or not, obviously. And so we've actually had 6 councils now take part. We wrapped up with 2 more last week. And those councils have also fed back on the prototype form that we've created as well. So they've given feedback on the form itself. So the assumptions were about various things. So it included who the form is aimed at. So it's currently aimed at people who are receiving universal credit, pension credit, or asylum support. And there's various reasons for us aiming it at that group of people. And we tested those assumptions to see whether they were correct. We also tested assumptions about where councils can get information from. And this included Searchlight as being the primary source of information for councils in this case. And so we were really interested in some assumptions around what we think Searchlight does and does not tell you. And then there was various assumptions around what makes people eligible for different benefits and the regulations that make it change things for people under specific circumstances. So, for example, people who receive guarantee credit will have different regulations applying to them than those who receive savings credit. And then also we'd made some assumptions about the proof or evidence requirements, and we tested those as well. And so we scored these assumptions. So if you imagine we were with a council and we showed them an assumption and said, is this assumption correct? We've then gone through and analysed all the things they told us, and we've sort of categorised it into a set of categories. So starting from the bottom, that would be, no, this is not correct, or not really, it's not quite correct, or I don't know, or I'm not sure, I'd have to go and check. And then on the positive side, it'd be, yes, it's sort of correct, but for these certain circumstances, or yes, this is true, or yes, this is true, and beyond that, it also allows you to do this, that, or other. So there might be people where they said the assumption is true, but there are further positive things also that sort of amplify the assumption. And by giving these things a score, we could add up across all 6 councils and come up with a sort of a graph that shows us how true or false an assumption is and what the level of agreement there was across the councils. So for the 28 assumptions, here's the results we've got so far. So the good news, as you can see, is that 22 of these assumptions were found to be true. There's generally a good level of agreement between councils on this, although there are some where there's slightly less agreement. So looking around assumptions 5 and 6, where they drop down a little bit. But generally speaking, this is a really positive result, which means the vast majority of the logic or the thinking that the form is based upon has turned out to be correct. Now, it's worth looking a little bit at the ones that were found to be false, because false is not always a bad thing. So for the ones that I've circled with 1, these were assumptions around what we had assumed was missing from Searchlight, and therefore we were asking multiple questions about these topics in our prototype form. But actually we found out that Searchlight can tell us more about that than we thought. And so the ones circled in 1 mean we can take some questions off the simplified form. On the flip side, around the ones that are circled in 3, these were about things that we had assumed could be got from Searchlight, but it's turned out it's not true. And these ones are around other household members. So we'd made some assumptions around what Searchlight can tell you about children, what Searchlight can tell you about partners, and what Searchlight can tell you about lodgers or subtenants. And this turned out to be incorrect. And councils told us what it is they actually need to know. And so that will be some additional questions that we'd need to add to our form. And then just some interesting ones. So 2, for example, looks to be slightly false. And this just showed up one of these sort of weird sort of obscure cases. So in the form, we've got a branching question around housing benefit that says, do you rent your property? And if they say no, then we assume they're not eligible for housing benefit. But what we've learned is that rent is quite a flexible term in this space. And there are situations around things like mooring fees and ground rent. So people who actually own their own houseboat or their own caravan could still claim housing benefit for other aspects. So that's some interesting things that turned out. But overall, it was a positive outcome in that the vast majority of what the form is based upon turns out to be true. And the things that we found to be false, we have also gathered the information we need to correct those assumptions, and they won't have a huge impact on the simplicity of the form, is our current thinking. So the sort of what I talked about as being the $1 million question was around, does the form ask everything you need to know to accurately assess an applicant for housing benefit or council tax reduction or free school meals or school essentials grant? So does the simple form gather all the required information? Through the course of these testing sessions, we did identify several missing questions that we're going to add in. But our overall observation is getting a definitive answer of yes, you definitely need to ask all of these things because they're definitely not in Searchlight is more challenging. And I think that's because councils don't routinely maintain a working list of all the things that they can see in Searchlight, because that's just not the way that you've been thinking about assessing these cases previously. So we started a question around, is there stuff we need to also ask that we're not currently asking that you haven't identified to us during these testing sessions? And so to tackle that, we worked with a council to analyse a combined council tax reduction and housing benefit form that they have been using, working on and tweaking for several years. So they're comfortable that it works well for them to perform this. And we worked with them to work out what questions could they actually answer, find the answers to in Searchlight for people who receive pension credit or universal credit. And the ones that were left are the ones that we know we need to add into our form, provided we're not already asking them. And so we've identified a few things in that way that about other questions we also need to add. The majority of these are around housing benefits specifically, so they will only be visible to those people who are applying for housing benefit. So it will have much less of an impact on the council tax reduction applications themselves. At the same time, we're also reviewing the regulations around council tax reduction and housing benefit, just to check if there are other things that jump out at us around sort of slightly obscure things that we perhaps could ask in order to give the benefit to a wider range of people. So we're trying to do a sort of a high level review of the regulations as they exist. But the important thing is that the testing and the pilots of this form will also be checking this. It'll be one of the things that we'll be looking at, which is, does the form gather the information you need to accurately assess somebody? And on that point, in parallel with this, we have been checking about whether we can test things in Searchlight, because we know that access to it is obviously and needs to be very carefully guarded and controlled by DWP. So our Welsh Government colleagues have met with DWP to ask them about whether we would be permitted to test new processes with Searchlight. And we've got confirmation that Searchlight records can be used for testing live cases. So provided it's somebody who has applied for council tax reduction or is receiving it now, then we can access legitimately their record in order to check whether the new process would give us the information we need in combination with what's visible in their Searchlight record. So I'm going to pass back to Lauren now. She'll talk you through about what we're going to do next.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so all right, before we wrap up, just here's a quick look at what's coming next. So first, we're going to be moving ahead with version 2 of the form. We've taken on board the feedback from this round of testing, and the next version will focus on making the changes that Adam has just run through. We'll definitely be sharing sort of designs and changes as they're ready, so you can see those changes kind of taking shape in upcoming show and tells. And as ever, if anybody wants to be sort of more involved in this, please do reach out to us. We're really happy to chat and share in a bit more detail. Next as well, we're bringing in the first phase of our user research. So this will involve speaking directly with users. Our objective is to evaluate how reducing the amount of information and evidence required in this application process affects users' experiences and their ability to complete the form successfully. So this phase will give us reassurances that we're moving in the right direction for users. And it's going to be fairly light touch before we then move into a more kind of in-depth research post our findings in this phase. And then finally, as Adam mentioned, we are reviewing the relevant regulations. So we want to make sure that the updated form and overall process fully align with the latest requirements. And as we progress, we'll be checking kind of every change against the regulatory framework so we can stay compliant and then avoid any future rework. So yeah, we'll continue to share updates as each piece moves forward. And thanks again for all of your input so far. It's really kind of helping us shape the direction of this next phase. And yeah, with that, that's our show and tell. I'll pause there for any questions people might have. David?
It's not a question. It's just I thought a bit, seeing as we've got so many people on the call who may be interested in some of the other work that's sitting alongside this. Just so people are aware that the steering group and the team that are supporting them are looking at some of those data share agreements that need to sit under this work as well, because Adam was talking and Lauren were talking about the compliance. So we're also working with DWP and very much with Wrexham as well to look at how we make sure that the data sharing is in place, that the MOUs are compliant with the MOU, so that the data that we're wanting to use as part of this single form can be used in the way that we're wanting it. So just to give everyone assurance that we are doing the work in the background as well to make sure that this model will work within the current agreements with DWP, or with a little tweak or data reuse requests or something like that. And hopefully if data reuse requests are required, we will have a template that Wrexham is looking at for us. And if they can get it to work, then we'll hopefully be able to have one that can offer around all local authorities to look at as well.
That's great. Thanks, David. Lee.
Yes, I'd be interested in finding out how this, if anyone's looked at integrating this then with workflow into the Welsh Benefits system. We use MRI's, well, formerly Harper's Academy system, which can then take, obviously they are pre-built forms and feed into workflow to automate some of the processes. Has any work been done around automating the form into various back-end systems?
So that's part of this current phase of the project, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, or interrupt me. Yeah, so we're looking to get the form built into a sandbox environment, and then we'll be testing it against local authorities' back office systems. So we should have a full update by the end of this project, which would be very early March, as to how it works and if there are any pain points or blockers there.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Can I add to that actually as well? So we do recognise that one of the challenges is that those of you who are using NEC or Capita systems and their front-end forms, that you have limited control over changing that form. And of course, that form, as you pointed out, will inject the information neatly into your back-end systems. And so what we're trying to do is to understand at this stage whether the form works logically, so whether it gathers the information that you need. But we recognise there may be some work to then do from a technical perspective to automate the movement of that data straight into your back-end systems, and that may require some sort of jiggery pokery that we would want to look at further down the track. But the initial thing is to check whether the form gathers the information you want and is more user-friendly for the residents as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thanks for the question, Oli, appreciate it.
Okay, I never know how long to leave it for for questions to come in.
Say last calls.
Yeah, any last calls, speak now or hold your peace. Okay, I know I said hold your peace, but you are welcome to email us after if anything comes up, or yeah, if you'd just like to have a chat with us in a bit more detail around the project so far. I think we'll call it there. Thanks everybody so much for joining, and yeah, we'll keep you up to date as to when the next show and tell will be.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
John.